From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
Welcome back. I'm Paul Gigot with the Wall Street Journal here on our Potomac Watch podcast. I'm here with Joe Sternberg and Bill McGurn. Just before we get to a clip I want to play you from President Biden, just want to introduce a factual point here. After the Wall Street Journal reported that Hamas and Hezbollah sources had said that Iran had signed off the invasion on Saturday, Secretary of State Blinken said that the U.S. had no direct information to confirm that on the part of Iran's role, but he said that certainly Iran had given longstanding support to Hamas. My assumption here is that the journal reporting is right, and this is going to call for a wholesale change in U.S. relations with Iran, particularly the bursting as an illusion, as you put it, that you can do a nuclear deal with these guys, that you can give them $6 billion for return of hostages, that you don't enforce oil sanctions, which has given them tens of millions of dollars since the Biden administration came in.
Yeah, I took the Secretary of State's statement as kind of protecting the Biden administration from all the things you just listed, because to admit that Iran was part of this would really require a rethink on all those things. So it was kind of weaselly, no direct evidence. What does that mean? There's indirect evidence, and and namely Hamas people and Hezbollah confirming they're not ashamed to say Iran supplies us and helped us with this. So I think that was more about protecting the Biden administration rather than securing Israel or going after Iran. It was a political statement, and we'll see how well it pans out. If it did happen, as the journal reports, as I think it did, and they had no direct evidence, maybe there's something wrong with our intel in the region, that we seem to be the only ones who are unaware of Iran's role in the attack on Israel.
All right, let's listen to President Biden talk on the weekend about U.S. support for Israel.
The United States stands with Israel. We will not ever fail to have their back. We'll make sure that they have the help their citizens need and they can continue to defend themselves. You know, the world's seen appalling images. Hamas terrorists crossing in Israel, killing not only Israeli soldiers, but Israeli civilians in the street, in their homes. Innocent people murdered, wounded, entire families taken hostage by Hamas. Israel has the right to defend itself and its people, full stop. There's never justification for terrorist attacks. And my administration's support for Israel's security is rock solid and unwavering.
Rock solid and unwavering. Good to hear from my point of view. I'm glad to hear it. But I've been around the block enough and had seen enough of these conflicts to know that rock solid becomes less than solid in administrations of both parties as the conflict goes on. And I think the real question here in the immediate next couple of weeks, Joe, will be once the Israelis gear up their campaign inside Gaza. Inevitably, there are going to be civilian casualties. We know that Hamas locates its fighters near hospitals, schools, mosques, and that civilians are going to be paraded before the cameras, particularly with air attacks. And it will increasingly be a propaganda war where Western sympathizers with the Palestinian cause, and in some respects, I think I am sympathetic with many Palestinians who do not want war, want peace, but they are murdered if they speak up and say, we disagree with what Hamas is doing. So as this unfolds in the next coming days, and if this campaign is as long as Netanyahu says it is going to be, and I suspect it will be, this will be the test of American support.
Yes, I mean, that was a good statement from President Biden. The problem in this kind of situation is always that after about the first 12 or 24 hours, you don't need statements, you actually need actions. And I think that what action would look like from Washington, from the Biden administration in this case, would be things like rethinking our approach to Iran and whether the sort of negotiations that the administration seems keen to encourage on Iran's nuclear program is actually doing more harm than good at this point. I think that it also means that the president is going to have to stare down a lot of factions further on the left of his own party who are likely to very quickly start coming out suggesting that the solution is to de-escalate on both sides and that both sides have to play a role in bringing this conflict to an end, which is going to be one of the perhaps more respectable ways that people are going to try to suggest that Israel shouldn't really be able to defend itself here. And so I think that the test of presidential leadership is going to be whether Biden is able to stand up and make the argument for whatever financial or military aid the Israelis are going to need in order to continue defending themselves, and also whether he's going to be able to stand up to elements in his own party that would resist that, and whether this is also going to trigger any broader rethink of the administration's Middle East policy in ways that might actually help tamp down on Iranian influence or other destabilizing factors.
And that U.S. policy toward Iran is crucial, in need of a rethinking. Whether or not the Biden administration has it in itself to do that, I don't know. But the political pressures in the United States may force it to. We shall see how many Democrats are willing to speak up here in support of Israel and a more robust response. The other interesting thing here, Bill, let's broaden this out a little bit. We have the danger immediately of, I think, a broader conflict. If Hezbollah gets in on Israel's north, Israel could soon be fighting a two-front war. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. But there will be, if that happens, and even if it doesn't, just to maintain the campaign in Gaza, they're going to need more weapons, more anti-aircraft missiles and missile defenses for the Iron Dome. The U.S. is going to have to help supply that. But now we have really two regional wars. We've got the war in Europe and Ukraine, Russia marauding in Ukraine. Now we have a bad actor in Iran fomenting another war in the Middle East. That's two conflicts at once besieging America's friends and interests. It really does suggest we're at a very dangerous moment in the world. You suggested earlier that one reason for this is the message that we have been sending about U.S. weakness, a message of retreat from the world. I wonder if this is going to change the politics of that in Washington. I wonder if, to put it bluntly, Washington is going to wake up to what is actually happening in the world and start to rethink this retreat from global leadership and indeed rearm ourselves instead of what we've been doing, which is letting our defenses deteriorate.
Yeah, I'm not optimistic, Paul. There are pressures in both parties. A lot of Republicans just want us out from everything, and they don't want us getting mixed up in these wars, even though the two you mentioned with Israel and Hamas and Ukraine and Russia, no American troops are involved. So there are a lot of forces in the Republican Party that are arguing for a kind of an isolationist stance. There's no better word for it. And at the same time, you have Joe Biden. You played that clip before, and you know what that reminded me of? That scene in Jerry Maguire when Beau Bridges reaches out to him and goes, "I don't need a contract. My word is as good as oak." And of course, he turned his back on Jerry Maguire at the same time. I think Joe Biden will say the right things because he knows we can't publicly abandon Israel. The politics of that are very bad. But the question is, will he be there a month from now? Will he be there 6 months from now when they do what they have to do to stay alive? And I think we have to defer to what they say are their needs, not put limits on it and say this. We have to do that. Nixon, for all the bad things he did, he was a real hero in the Yom Kippur War when he told Golda Meir, we'll basically resupply you. Don't worry about running out. And I don't see that commitment from either the administration or the rump of conservatives who dominate today. There are a lot of good Republicans, I think, out there, but I worry that they may be a minority few. So I think we have to worry about that in addition to all the attacks that have come down.
That is going to be a vital question going forward. We just end on this podcast by noting that two most solid responses I heard among Republican presidential candidates this weekend were from Nikki Haley and Mike Pence. Some others were not quite as strong in their response. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out in the presidential debate, because the American defenses are not what they used to be. And we need to get serious about rebuilding them, and soon. Joe Sternberg and Bill McGurn, thanks for joining me today. This is going to be a story that plays out over many weeks and months.